Welcome to Totally Got Out of Bed, a podcast to support people who've lost loved ones to suicide and the people that support them. I'm Nora Flum, and I lost my son Eric on January 3rd, 2018. He was 25, only 3.5 weeks from turning 26.
And I'm Tony Plant, and I lost my daughter Anna on January 30th, 2016. She was 15 years old.
Welcome to Episode 3, Part 2, where we address the question, what's happening to my life? In Part 1, Tony and I talked about what it was like for us for the first few days and weeks after we lost our kids. In Part 2 now, our goal is to share what our key takeaways are from that time. What did we learn, and maybe what we wished we had known at the time? We hope that in hearing our stories and hearing our experiences, you find some tools for your grief toolbox that you can use to make it through this nightmare you weren't expecting.
So as we look back on the first few weeks after our kids died, there's a few things that we remember being specifically important to us. And here are some of those takeaways for that time for me. And the first thing that I came up with, and I think I talked about this a few episodes ago, but is to have a plan. If I was going anywhere or somewhere, I'd have to figure out an escape plan first. I would always figure out worst case scenario plans. Like, what if I lose it? What if I have to leave? What if someone asks me how I am? What if someone that doesn't know asks me how I've been? Or another very hard question, what if someone asks me how many kids do you have?
Oh, yeah.
That one was particularly hard for me because it was like, what do I say?
What do you say? I mean, yeah, you have to prepare some sort of answer. So what do you say when somebody asks you how many kids you have?
Exactly. So it was important for me to say that I have 2 kids because I do have 2 kids. It's still important for me to say that. Depending on how brave I am, I'll go into it or I won't. If someone asks, I'll usually, like if I didn't know them, I would say, well, I have 2 kids and leave it at that. If they ask, oh, well, how old are they? Then, you're kind of sucked in and you have no choice. I would have to say, well, one of them is 18 and graduated from high school and the other one just passed away. Yeah. And if they ask more questions, then you kind of got to get into it. And I always felt like, well, you know what? You asked. Sorry, so here goes. Yeah. Well, she was 15. She died in January, and she took her own life. And if they wanted to hear more, then, of course, I was willing to tell them more. But that was sort of my go-to. If they didn't ask, if they said, how many kids do you have? And I said 2, that was it. Or sometimes if I was feeling particularly like I wanted to advocate, I would just out and out say, well, I have 2 kids, but one of them died. I would go right into it right away.
Yeah.
Depending on my mood.
And that's your choice. You can tell them or not. I prefer to say it flat out. So my standard answer is I have 2. John is, and then I tell how old he is and what he's doing now. And I have another son, Eric, who died at the age of 25. And then again, if they ask me, I will say his death was ruled a suicide. And then we talk about it from there if they want to follow up. But unfortunately, most of the time that pretty much shuts people down. They aren't interested in asking any more questions. Or they are in kind of a morbid way. They want to say, oh, how did you do it? Have you ever gotten that question? So
yeah,
inappropriate.
I have. Yeah, that's just like, it's so inappropriate.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just say, completely, thank you.
Right. How did you do it exactly?
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, you finished.
Yeah, right. It's just like, that's a good question if you're just listening. Don't ask anybody that.
Yeah, there you go. All right. My one big takeaway is taking care of the grief is important. Grief expands to fill the space it needs. And I remember when I hit the 3-week mark, I thought, 3 weeks ago today. And that just reminded me of when the kids were little and you talked about their lives and you measured their lives in days and weeks. And I realized what I had a grief baby. And in my mind, my grief baby was a little girl. And maybe it's because she's me and learning to live this new life, this new identity that I've got now as the mother of a person who died by suicide. But my grief baby is a newborn, or at least it was. And I was thinking, like, as a newborn, She screams constantly. She needs 100% attention. There isn't any time that you can leave her alone. She's demanding, and I realized that I needed to learn to take care of her, or she was going to become a tyrant. So if I didn't learn to take care of my grief baby, it would rule my life. And so I had to learn to do what I needed to take care of my grief.
It's such a great way to look at it because definitely when you think of it as a baby, I mean, that's just so true. At first, you're talking about how long it's been by day, hour, day, and week. And as it goes on, you sometimes are able to say more like months or years. So, such a good way to look at it. Yeah, you got to do what you got to do for you because it is your grief and it's not somebody else's. It's your loss, it's your struggle. Nobody gets to tell you how to get through it. The length of it, the breadth of it, the depth, it's all yours. And everybody's is different. Some people might be able to talk about it right this minute and go start a nonprofit and change the world in 2 months. I've known people who have done that. That was not me. I wasn't able to keep my thoughts together that long.
Right? Your experience is your experience, and you have a choice about how you want to deal with it in the world. If people say something that is thoughtless or inconsiderate or just ignorant, you've got a choice to rise to that occasion or not. I have a choice. I can get angry. I can respond calmly. I can ignore it. Griever's choice. You get to decide how you react. Griever's choice.
Absolutely, always and forever on that one. And you know, don't worry about perceived societal expectations. So, because sorry, if your kid dies by suicide, those societal expectations are gone. You don't have to follow any of them. Do what you want. Be you. Um, like for me, thank you cards were really a problem. That was really hard for me because there were so many people at the funeral and at the visitation, or people that just sent cards and gifts that I didn't know. My husband was a wrestling coach in the community, so there was lots of people I didn't know, and we both had lived in the community a long time, like almost 20 years. And so we knew a lot of people. And I grew up around here, and my husband grew up not far from here. So there was a lot of people around that knew us. So I was looking at seriously 1,000+ thank you cards, and I didn't have addresses for most of them, and I couldn't find them. Some of them I didn't even know who they were, and so thank you cards really weren't going to happen. So I had a card printed up at at the I think it was at Target actually, and it was just like a Christmas card with photo on it, Anna's photo, and just some writing. And I sent those out to all the addresses I could find, and then I posted the card on Facebook and said, "Sorry if I didn't send you one, but thank you." And that was, pretty much that was it. Good enough.
Yeah,
That was all they were going to get from me.
us too. We were fortunate to have my niece had a was a graduate of a school in communications, and so she became our communications director basically, and she had thank you cards printed up for us. And then my family, I remember the day after the funeral, we just sat down and at the table all wrote thank you cards. So I had a group of maybe 8-10 people knocking them out. So we got through the first batch anyway, and then as things came in later, I took care of them little by little. But yeah, get help with those thank you cards. But yeah, what Tony says is societal expectations. Screw them. You don't have to follow any conventions, any social conventions anymore. You have special dispensation as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. So learning, that's what like Nora just said. Get help. You need to learn to ask for what you need because people are going to want to help, but they're not going to know how to help. And so that is one of the hardest things to do, maybe, to like just take a minute and go, okay, I'm a sobbing mess, but what do I need right now? And so when I realized, for instance, that Friday nights were going to be really hard for me because my husband wasn't home, and frequently that was the night Anna and I would watch a movie or go to Target or whatever we were going to do, I just told my family that someone needed to come to my house on Friday nights and hang out with me. It was just really important to take that quiet time, listen to my heart. And if in my heart it needed me to call somebody and talk about Anna, I would put out a text to like my people and say, somebody call me. I want to talk about Anna. It sounds really hard and awkward, and I'm not saying that it's really easy, but I'm telling you, it will make it your journey maybe a little bit easier because it'll be out there. Otherwise, I think what happens with grief, and you can please join in on this, Nora, but I just feel like people want to help, but they don't know what to do.
Hmm. Yeah, and one of the things that I think people find helpful is finding the support that they need through people who've experienced the same thing. Like Tony and I found the survivors resource support group, where it doesn't feel good to be there. That's for darn sure, but it does feel better to know that there are people that know the feeling, that share that same experience, that know that same sense of both emptiness, like you're just a shell of a person with nothing left on the inside, but at the same time, this feeling of profound weight that you're carrying on the inside. It is very, I don't want to say comforting, but at least it feels less isolating to know that you're among people who know that feeling. Otherwise, grieving can be entirely isolating. Um, so find support where you can. I know that there are support groups available in some areas, but not enough of them. There are not enough support groups. I know that some people find support online. I think we were both members of a Facebook support group for moms who've lost kids to suicide. There are other griever support groups online, and there are people I know that get out and post, this is the only group that I can scream to because this is happening in my life. This is the only group that gets it. Those outlets are necessary. Uh, they've been invaluable for me.
Right. And actually I found even just Googling grief or grief quotes or, I found a lot of information about things just by doing that, just going on the internet. So, in particular, if you're not looking for facts, Google and all those things are, if you're just looking for articles, I think that that's a little more realistic to look for, because if you're looking for facts, you might not get always accurate just Googling something. But if you're looking for just information and articles on and that kind of thing, it's much easier to get that information that way. There are some really good groups, but there's also some that are just not the right fit. I think there's a group that I joined on Facebook for grievers, and it just to me was like everybody's just sitting around in here just feeling sorry for themselves, and that I understand. So if somebody posts, I'm really having a hard day, blah blah blah, but the responders to those posts weren't helpful. So I just found it wasn't helpful to me, so I didn't stay in that group. So I do think you got to do what's right for you. You
Absolutely.
got to, just take the time that you need to have to do it the way you want to do it.
Yeah.
And if you want to go through all their stuff and sell it, that's great. If you want to keep it all and never sell it, that's great too. So it's a personal thing, and any way you want to do it is the right way.
Yeah. Yeah, I found I had to find a balance between taking care of my grief and just distracting myself from my grief, especially for those first few weeks. Um, like I said, I kept a journal, and as I found myself journaling, one of the things that I found very interesting, I know that therapists always say journal, express your feelings, get them out. But one of the things that I found is when I was in a particularly dark place, and you know that there are times when you're in a particularly dark place, as I started writing those feelings out, it was like a part of my brain kicked in, my caretaker kicked in, and started doing the self-care talk to my mind. And that helped get me out of that particularly dark place. So that's what worked for me. But then again, there was also distracting. Like I said, I had that adult coloring book, so I've spent a lot of time coloring. I'd never colored since I was a child, but I found that very helpful and very relaxing. And I spent a lot of time watching TV, just lighthearted, happy shows, comedies. I have probably watched every episode of Big Bang Theory at least a dozen times. I, for a while, was very hooked on Say Yes to the Dress because it was all just very uplifting. Nobody's gonna die. Nobody's, every once in a while there is a reference or something, but you know what to expect from shows like that. So I found them distracting, and I found them helpful, and it's just something to lift my spirits for a little while.
Right, you got to do what you got to do, that's for sure. But you do know what you can't do too, and you got to keep that in mind as well. And, for me, it was like there's certain songs I couldn't listen to. There's certain, Anna watched The Breakfast Club about 20 times the month before she died. And I couldn't watch that, and I still can't. I haven't watched it since, and it was like her favorite movie. She absolutely loved it. And I also couldn't and still can't. This is interesting and a little off topic, but not really. I couldn't listen to her voice. It's really hard for me. And still, it's really hard for me. So any video that I had or any recording of her voice, it just broke my heart. I couldn't do it. So, but I know that's different for everybody too. Some people just want to keep that voice or that recording of their loved ones' voice for forever. And I want to keep them, don't get me wrong, but I'm not even ready now after 5 years to listen to them. So that's the difference. But like I said, everybody's different.
Yeah, I guess the major takeaway then is to be self-aware, to understand what you need, what you don't need, to express those to other people. And the thing that frustrates me is when I read these posts about people who have family members or people who love them, who get tired of the grief, who can't live with their grief anymore. We lost somebody that we loved to suicide. We don't have a choice. We live with this day in and day out. If you are, I don't even know what to say. You just have to live with this. There's no choice. You don't get to wake up in the morning and go, oh, I don't feel like grieving today. No, it is something that is happening, and it's something that is changing us forever. I wish our loved ones would all understand that. I am blessed with loved ones who get that, who understand that in me. But I know that there are posts online from people who have family who just don't. So if you are a listener who has family that just doesn't get it, and you have figured out ways, you have figured out tools to deal with that, please let us know. We'd love to share those tools for those people because we know that they're out there.
Absolutely. I actually know of a person who lost their child to suicide, and after about 2 months, one of their friends said, "Aren't you over that yet?" What?
Oh, yeah.
What? I can't even fathom that.
Oh,
To
yeah.
me, that is so. What do you mean? I
Yeah.
mean, I will never be over this.
Yeah.
It's not something that you just get over.
Yeah.
It's your kid.
Yep. I would post frequently about grief and about loss and about Eric. I'd post on his birthday, I'd post on the 6th month, I'd post whenever anything happened that I would remind me of him. I did post a lot. And I had a friend who said, remember, you have a son who's alive. In retrospect, I know that came from a place of concern and of love, that she wanted me not to dwell on the loss, but to celebrate the living. I get that now. But that was devastating. Yeah.
Right. I know. I understand. I can't even remember. I can't even imagine thinking that, actually, because it's like, I just want to say, duh. I know I have a kid that's still alive, but what would you like me to do? I'm having a hard time, once again, getting out of bed.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure how to deal with my kid.
And he can speak for himself. He's alive. He's got a voice.
Right. And, that's another thing. I will have another episode on that, is how to, really how to continue being a parent to your other children or child. Because that's a whole nother thing. And I think is a topic well worth, discussion. Because that's hard.
Yeah. All right. So that wraps up episode 3, part 2. Our next episode, we hope to talk about how do you get through today? Because just getting through each day is a challenge. So, in the meantime, know that if you or if someone you know is in immediate danger, please go to the nearest emergency room or call 911. Also, if you just feel like you need to talk, if you're considering suicide or if someone you know is considering suicide, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. The Lifeline is free, it's confidential, and it's available to everyone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Or text HELLO to 741-741. That crisis text hotline is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through the United States, and that serves anyone, any type of crisis.
And we'd like to thank our extremely talented team, Wendy Wolf, our tech guru, Monica Lavorsi, the composer and performer behind our theme song, Hold My Hand Now, and a special thank you to Survivor Resources, the group that continues to support us and others in the wake of our tragedies. Thanks for listening today. Please join us next time, and remember, smile when you can and cry when you have to.
Hold my hand now. Hold my hand now. Hold my hand now and be as one. The colors start to fade. Gray is the only shade that you see now. Lost in the charade of the journeyman's parade, can't see a way out. As you keep marching onward, oh, all you gotta do is reach out and hold my hand now. Hold my hand now. Hold my hand. Hold my hand now and be as one. Hold my hand now. Hold my hand. The tracks begin to sway. You're in the middle of the fray, so hold on tight now. Your grip begins to slip. You tumble towards the lip of the open train and high.